Okay, let me ask you this. Would you ever seriously consider buying, say, a $100 bottle of champagne at a gas station?
Huh. Probably not. I mean, the whole idea feels, well, wrong, doesn't it? The setting is just completely off.
Exactly. It's that exact sense of wrongness, that mismatch that our source materials for this deep dive really digs into.
Yeah, it argues that maybe inadvertently, a lot of top luxury brands are putting their stories, their most valuable asset really, into similarly, jarring environments.
That's it. We're looking at an article by Mark Abergel, and it's got this great title, Would You Sell Champagne at a Gas Station? Of course not. And it basically challenges how luxury brands are thinking, or maybe not thinking, about where they tell their stories, why that choice matters so much.
So our mission today, our deep dive, is all about unpacking this core idea from Abergel. For luxury, the context where you encounter the story, it isn't just a nice to have, it's fundamentally as crucial as the story itself.
Right. We need to get into why telling these really crafted luxury narratives on, mass big tech platforms just not built for luxury values, why that's a strategic problem.
And also what the opportunity might be for brands that are willing to, well, break away from that mold.
Okay, so let's start with the current thinking. There seems to be this assumption, right, that partnering with Hollywood or getting your documentary onto Netflix, maybe putting amazing stuff on Instagram or YouTube, that's kind of enough.
Yeah, the idea is basically if the story is powerful, if the film is beautiful, the channel itself doesn't really matter that much.
Like, cultural relevance just comes from having great content, period. You don't need to worry so much about the plumbing, the infrastructure.
But the source argues, and this is really the crux of it, that this thinking is flawed, especially for luxury. It fundamentally misunderstands what actually creates desire, what builds that mystique.
So it's not just about making a brilliant film or having stunning photography.
Apparently not. I mean, the article's central point, its thesis, is that in the luxury world, how you see the story and where you see it, that carries enormous weight.
Okay.
Context isn't just like window dressing. It's a strategic mode. It protects the brand's essence. Luxury is this whole package message, medium, context, and that resulting aura.
And this is where it gets really interesting, because the source points out this massive mismatch. These platforms where so many luxury stories end up, Netflix, Meta, Google, TikTok.
Yeah.
They just weren't designed with luxury values in mind. Yep. Subtlety, mystique, refinement. That's not their core business.
Exactly. They're built for totally different things. Their whole architecture, their DNA is optimized for reach, for speed, for algorithmic virality.
Right.
And here's the key thing the article stresses.
Mm-hmm.
They don't just host the stories. They actively shape them.
How so? Like, they dictate the pace. You've got to be quick, grab attention immediately.
Yeah, shorter formats, definitely.
Yeah.
They push certain types of language, what's trending, meme formats. The whole structure is about endless scrolling, swiping.
Very mass market framing, I guess, not intimate.
Precisely. Mass over intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
And the consequence, according to Abergel, is that these often incredibly rich, nuanced luxury stories, they get compressed.
Yeah.
Flattened, stripped of their atmosphere.
So a Maisons story, which maybe should feel like a whispered secret in a beautiful boutique.
Ends up being, as the article puts it, shouted into the scroll alongside everything else. Cat videos, news headlines, ads.
Wow. Even if you have the best creative team, the best filmmakers involved.
Doesn't matter as much because you're forced to play by their rules, the platform's rules. It has to fit the algorithm, look good as a thumbnail, maybe get boiled down to 30 seconds.
The pacing feels wrong for luxury then.
Mm-hmm.
The audience isn't necessarily in the right mindset. The brand's specific codes get watered down.
Exactly. Diluted.
Yeah.
True luxury desire, the article argues, has its own language, its own rhythm. And that language isn't autoplay videos and trending tabs.
So the brand might still look nice on screen.
Sure. Visually appealing, perhaps. But something subtle gets lost. That feeling of rarity, of exclusivity starts to erode. Doesn't feel special in the same way.
The article gives a really sharp example with Dior. Okay, so Dior would absolutely never, ever sell a Lady Dior handbag on Amazon, right?
Of course not. The context, Amazon's mass market feel, it would just cheapen the bag instantly, degrade its value.
Total non-starter. And yet, and this is the paradox the source highlights, the documentary Dior and I, which is this beautiful deep dive into the brand's craft and heritage.
Yeah, I've seen that one. It's fantastic.
It is hosted on Amazon Prime Video, just sort of lost in there, as the article says, lost between cooking shows and horror movies.
Ouch. That really paints a picture, doesn't it?
It's such a jarring contrast. You think about how obsessively Dior controls its physical stores. The scent, the lighting, the velvet rope feel, everything is meticulously crafted for reverence.
Creating a whole world.
And then they seem to just surrender their stories, the very things that build that reverence, to these platforms designed for speed, impulse buys, mass consumption.
It makes that Veuve Clicquot at a gas station comparison feel suddenly, well, less absurd.
Right. Why is it okay for your carefully crafted brand film to sit next to some random prank video or a fleeting TikTok filter?
It really drives home the article's point. This isn't just about getting seen, about visibility. It's about sovereignty, control.
Getting eyeballs on these huge platforms is the easy part, maybe?
But crucially, the source argues these platforms aren't neutral ground. They're not just empty frames. They are architectures of perception, designed with their own goals, their own logic. They set the terms.
And for luxury, visibility without that control just becomes exposure.
And exposure with the right frame, the right context. It doesn't lift the brand up. It actually erodes its meaning, its aura over time.
This idea that context is content for luxury. It really clicks when you think about their physical spaces. Everything is deliberate, isn't it?
Absolutely. The specific lighting on a product, the subtle fragrance in the air, the texture of an invitation, even like the multi-million-dollar art on the wall that isn't even for sale.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Those details aren't just decoration. The source argues they are the experience. They embody the narrative just as much as the product itself. Context really is content in luxury.
So hold that picture of the super controlled, curated boutique in your mind.
Okay.
And now contrast that with, as the article puts it, the chaos of an Instagram scroll.
Yeah. It's a huge difference. The source talks about this as the Faustian bargain. These big tech platforms are like cultural engines engineered to flatten difference.
Flatten difference, how so?
By rewarding immediacy, stripping out mystique. They're built for mass attention. Rarity is almost treated like a bug, you know. Nuance just slows things down, creates friction.
So their logic is basically compress everything, make it fast, reward what goes viral right now.
Exactly. Speed and scale.
Yeah.
That's the game.
And the result is that even incredibly special, artistic, emotionally deep stories, they just get chucked into the same stream as everything else.
Swipe, scroll, forget. The platform's structure itself makes the exceptional feel ephemeral, temporary.
There's that great quote in the article from Anish Melwani, the LVMH America's CEO. He was talking about why they put serious art in their stores.
Oh, yeah, I remember that part.
He said something like, we're not selling the art, but having the art in that environment creates this feeling of inspiration, and it reinforces that feeling of accomplishment.
That feeling of accomplishment, that's so key to luxury's emotional pull, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not just buying a thing.
It's about feeling like you've arrived, belonging to this curated world.
But that feeling, that specific emotion, it needs the right environment to actually bloom. It just doesn't really translate well into a 30-second viral clip or some algorithm pushing content at you.
And you think about the clients, the high net worth individuals, they're already used to this curated context, right?
Yeah.
They expect it.
Totally. First-class lounges, private clubs, they value exclusivity and environments that signal you belong here. The context reinforces the value proposition.
The source makes this really sharp point. These clients aren't just collecting luxury things, they're collecting rare ambiances.
Ooh, I like that. Rare ambiances.
And when a Maison tells its story inside someone else's world, a social feed, a streaming platform, it gives up control over that crucial atmosphere.
It's basically trading its unique authorship, its control over the feeling, just for access, for eyeballs.
And the result, maybe slowly, maybe subtly, is that the Maison's special aura just dissolves into someone else's algorithm. It loses what makes it distinct.
Which leads us neatly into the source's big proposal. Luxury needs to reclaim its space. It needs to own its ecosystem.
But the article is careful to say this isn't about building massive tech infrastructure just for the sake of it, not tech vanity.
No, that's just playing the commodity game. This is about cultural sovereignty, authorship, control over the narrative environment.
Technology, in this view, should serve the story, help deepen it, not dictate how it's told or how fast.
Moani's example was described as a quiet but radical blueprint. LVMH avoided the hype around things like meme coins,
Right.
but they did quietly embed chips in some bags using blockchain for digital passports to guarantee authenticity. They didn't even call them NFTs.
That feels really smart, actually. It wasn't chasing trends. It was using tech almost invisibly to reinforce core luxury values like authenticity, trust, transparency.
Exactly. Tech serving tradition, not trying to replace it.
So what does owning your own cultural ecosystem actually allow you to do, according to the source?
Well, first, it gives you cultural sovereignty,
Yeah.
complete control. How the story is told, who gets to see it, the format, the pace, no external algorithm messing with the logic or deciding who sees what.
Okay, that makes sense. What else?
Second, data intimacy. Understanding your clients not through, cookies and creepy third-party tracking, but through shared experiences, memory, emotion, consent, building real relationships.
Not just transactional data points.
Right. And third, it lets luxury operate at its natural rhythm, ritual and pace. Luxury isn't about push notifications and instant gratification. It works in seasons, in the hours spent in an atelier, the time it takes for a harvest.
Yeah, that's a huge disconnect with the speed of social media.
Totally. The source beautifully says that desirability doesn't scale through speed. It grows through atmosphere, through mystery, through ritualized attention.
When you think about it that way, you can imagine some amazing content possibilities within an owned ecosystem built for that kind of reverence.
Exactly. The source throws out ideas like, imagine a Loro Piana short film about the cashmere harvest, released seasonally, treated like a real cultural event.
Or a Ramoa documentary that's less about luggage and more about the whole philosophy of travel and discovery. Slow, thoughtful.
A Moet and Cheval Blanc masterclass presented like a beautiful cinematic poem, not rushed.
Maybe a series curated by Pharrell Williams exploring something deep like the history of Black dandyism.
Or even funding genuinely high-quality fictional series, like Oscar-level stuff, where luxury is just the authentic backdrop, not the blatant focus.
There's that really blunt quote from an unnamed senior LVMH exec in the article.
Oh, yeah.
Saying something like, today we have to pander to Hollywood, Netflix, Instagram, fit their mold. If we had our own ecosystem, we'd never have to dilute or pander again, ever.
Wow. That really lays it bare, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. Owning the ecosystem isn't about hiding away. It's about building your own stage where the world comes to experience luxury on luxury's terms.
In its authentic voice, at its own pace.
Yeah, and the strategic payoff. The source argues it's huge. This own platform becomes like infrastructure, like a private airport terminal or a hidden atelier.
Invisible, maybe, but strategically decisive. It gives you freedom to set the pace, shape the values, actively stage desirability, instead of just chasing viral hits.
The article lays out 4 specific strategic payoffs. First one, it restores pricing power.
Okay, how so?
Well, luxury pricing isn't just cost plus. It's driven by symbolism, scarcity, the story behind it all. An owned platform lets you unfold that story, the artisan, the muse, the history, in a controlled, immersive way.
So it translates that symbolic value, that meaning, directly into the ability to command a premium price. It's building the why behind the price tag.
Exactly. Building meaning, not just fiddling with profit margins. Yeah. Second payoff. It builds unshakable desirability.
Emotional connection, not just data points again.
Right. Luxury desire is deep, emotional. Owning the platform lets you whisper, not shout. You can be precise, control the mood, the atmosphere. It's that mise en scène idea the source mentions being felt, not just seen.
Like those examples, the seasonal film, the private masterclass, it creates a feeling.
Third payoff.
Yeah.
It shields the brand from dilution. This is crucial.
Like brand insurance.
Kinda. Think about the constant barrage of a mass social feed. Your beautiful brand film next to a discount furniture ad or a silly meme. It just wears away at the brand's aura over time.
Because algorithms tend to favor the loud, the simple, the instantly gratifying.
Right. Owning the platform lets you protect your visual codes, your emotional rhythm, the whole context. You curate your narrative home, just like you curate your boutique.
Control the context. Protect the aura.
Got it. And the final payoff, it becomes a cultural passport.
What does that mean exactly, a cultural passport?
In a world that feels pretty fragmented, storytelling is a kind of soft power. An owned platform isn't just about selling stuff. It's this ongoing act of cultural curation, sharing heritage, shaping taste.
So it moves beyond just commerce.
Yeah, it becomes a tool for building bridges, inviting people into your world based on shared values, cultural alignment. The source even calls it policy by other means. The platform becomes this passport to global influence, allowing the Maison to be a curator of taste and culture, but on its own terms. And the source gives this power a name: narrative capital.
Narrative capital, I like that.
And it suggests this might actually be more potent than financial capital today. Because money buys access, sure, but narrative builds lasting meaning, connection, loyalty.
Okay, so if we pull all this together, the core message from this deep dive seems really clear. For luxury brands, it's not just what stories you tell, even if they're amazing stories.
It's where you tell them and how. And maybe most importantly, on whose terms you're telling them.
These mass platforms, big tech,
Yeah.
this source frames them as powerful temples of attention, sure. But they have their own rules, their own logic.
And when luxury plays by those rules, tells its stories there, it's like praying at someone else's altar. You have to conform.
And that conformity, no matter how slick it looks on the surface, it risks chipping away at the very essence of what makes luxury feel, well, luxurious.
It might still look like luxury, but it subtly stops feeling like it over time.
Because that feeling, that desire in luxury, it's so tied up not just in the message, but the medium, the frame, the texture, the pace, even the silence around it.
Yeah, like that art in the store that isn't for sale but makes you feel something. Or the invitation to an exclusive event you can't just click on. The story you hear in a special place at a special time.
That's the magic.
Yeah.
And to protect that magic, to scale a brand's aura without watering it down, the argument is you have to control the frame, the environment.
You need your own ecosystem, one built for reverence, not just clicks. An ecosystem that protects rarity, respects attention, rewards depth over just going viral.
Ultimately, the source argues what's really on the line here for these historic Maisons is their cultural sovereignty, their ability to define themselves.
And it leaves us with this really powerful final thought. The luxury houses that figure out how to own both their unique voice and the stage where that voice is heard.
Those are the ones that will likely define the next 50 years of luxury.
And the ones that don't, the ones that just keep trying to fit into everyone else's platform.
Well, the implication is they'll just scroll by, become part of the noise.
Wow. It really makes you think about that whole concept of narrative capital, doesn't it? Like,
Yeah.
where else do we see this playing out? Where the context, the how and where is maybe even more powerful in shaping value and meaning than the what itself.
A fundamental strategic question, I think, for anyone trying to build something meaningful and lasting in a world that seems increasingly geared towards the fast and the fleeting. Definitely something to chew on.